Hey everyone, this is Joanna Nin. I am a real estate broker in the Greater Triangle area in North Carolina, and I wanted to welcome you to my first live ever on YouTube. I would like to talk to you about some home buying secrets that are very different than other states. And so, because I see this a lot in our daily practice, I've decided to share them with you since there's a lot of people relocating right now with COVID. There's a lot happening economically, and it seems like a lot of people from California, from New York, New Jersey, all over the United States and international, as a matter of fact, are deciding to make North Carolina their home. That being said, North Carolina is a Cavean emptor state. There you go. You've got the first piece of knowledge, which means that in North Carolina, when you buy a home, the seller doesn't really have to tell you anything about a house. You will be signing some disclosures. The sellers have the option of checking no, yes, or no representation on those disclosures. And you have a period called the due diligence period that you actually have to pay for at the time of contract in order to check the house out. So the way it works is that while in other states there's the contingency period or some sort of short period where you can go and you can walk out and there's really not a lot at stake, in North Carolina you can actually give the sellers even $10,000, $8,000. It's all negotiable depending on how many offers there are on the property, and you are at risk of losing that money in that due diligence period if you discover that there are some issues with the home. Going back to the Cavean emptor part of my conversation, it just means buyer be aware. So be aware, know that you are risking, or you could be risking, a lot of money at the time of contract. The good part is that that due diligence period will actually go back to you at closing, right? So you are going to get that money back. But you also have an earnest money that most likely will be going to the listing agent or to the attorney that will be representing you in the transaction. And that earnest money is actually in place in case, for example, you have a due diligence period of 3 weeks to do your inspection, the regular inspection, your termite inspection. The appraisal will be done in that due diligence period. If you decide to stay under contract, it's all going well, and let's just say that 2 days before closing, there's an issue with your loan, in case you have a loan, and you can't close. The earnest money is something that protects the seller after that due diligence period. So always remember, in North Carolina, there's 2 checks that you will be giving the seller, and another one, earnest money, that will be going into an escrow account in the attorney's office or in the listing agent's office. And that is to protect the seller in case you decide to walk away after your due diligence period. I know it's very unique, but a lot of people are not used to that. And they're saying, well, why can't I get the money back if there's something wrong with the house? It's just Cavean emptor, buyer be aware. I'm giving you, says the seller, the time to check the house, to perform your appraisal and all of that. And in case something doesn't go right the way you want it to go, I'm so sorry. Feel free to walk away. You will be losing your due diligence money. And if you walk away after your due diligence period ended, you will probably be losing your earnest money as well. Obviously, there's some clauses in the contract that state that if the seller actually misrepresents something, right, they are not honest, right? If, for example, they tell you in the property disclosure that the house has an HVAC that is 5 years old, but actually the HVAC is 8 years old and it really needs to be changed, that can cost you somewhere around $8,000 or so. So I, as an agent, will go on your behalf and say, Mr. Seller and Mr. Listing Agent, you have misrepresented this property. So at this point, my buyer is decided to walk away. But because of your misrepresentation, we would really like to have that due diligence money back. It is very rare that that happens, and it is very rare that you can actually get that money back, regardless of how good the agent is, just because the way the contract is written. However, if the misrepresentation from the seller is quite significant, you have some chances of getting your money back, right? The other thing for the seller is that at that point, if you walk away, they have to put the house back on the market. People will see that there was something that's quite not right there. So there's some marks that are going to be arising from the fact that you as a buyer walk away. So again, I think what you have to remember from this video is that in North Carolina, as a buyer, you come in and you have a due diligence period to check the house after you're under contract. For that due diligence period, you will be paying a due diligence fee directly to the seller. The seller will be cashing that money as soon as and it's due at time of contract, as soon as you go under contract. And then you have an earnest money fee that will have to go as well from your account at the time of the contract, or it can be additional earnest money, but that is not something that we see very often. So you do have to think about how much money you have in your account to go under contract. You're going to be having to think about your closing costs, about the down payment. You could have as little as 3% or 3.5% to put as a down payment on a house here. So keep those things in mind and have an open mind when you come to North Carolina, and always educate yourself before obviously placing an offer. So you want to make sure you understand your risks. What is the due diligence? What is the earnest money? And the fact that both of those checks, both of those amounts are going to be credited back to you at closing. So you're not going to be losing that money in case you decide to stay in contract and close on the property. However, if something goes wrong and you decide to walk away in your due diligence period, you will lose that due diligence fee. And again, remember, that due diligence fee is something that is negotiable. A lot of people say, well, we've heard that it might be 1% of the list price or sales price, or 2% or whatever percentage. That has not been the case in the last 10 years, at least, because there are so many multiple offers on homes here in North Carolina, and the market is so hot with all of the people relocating that we had cases where people were putting $8,000, as I said, or $10,000 sight unseen on a property. So that means I'm actually in a situation like that right now, where we're working with someone and the property in a very good neighborhood, Haddingham in Raleigh, is coming on the market. It's a great investment property, and our buyer says, well, I might actually want to put an offer sight unseen. But the house was built in 1994. So he's thinking, well, the HVAC might be original, the water heater might be original. We know that the roof was actually changed by the HOA. What do we do now? And so if you are not weak of heart, right, and if you really want the property, and listen, we might have to change the HVAC, we can ask for a home warranty, but we are just gonna go full in, we just really want the house. You need to put a strong due diligence amount in order for that seller to consider you, especially when they know they will be getting a lot of other offers. So that is something that I want you to keep in mind. Again, due diligence, earnest money, both of them go back to you. But then again, you could be losing both of them if the seller doesn't misrepresent, and if you just decide to walk away, regardless of the issues with the property, if they didn't misrepresent the property. So no matter what you find, it's again a risk. However, our job is to make sure that we ask all the questions to the listing agent. We know exactly what the disclosures are saying. And again, as per Cavean emptor state, the seller can say, is there a problem with the house? No wrap. Do you know how much the HOA is? I don't know, no wrap. I haven't lived there in a while. That's very rare, because usually they know the HOA fees. But what type of pipes do you have, Mr. Seller? I don't know, no rep. So in that case, it's a little bit difficult, right? It's very difficult actually to go after them because all they did is no rep, no rep, no rep, no rep. So you don't really have a lot to cling on as a buyer. And for us as buyer's agents, we just go and ask the listing agent, right? And then we go and we look at a house. We look for any signs of potential damage, any leaks, anything that might be an issue with the roof, any signs of previous issues in the crawl space, or siding issues. How are the windows? Are they old? Are they new? All of these things we look out for you, like we look at for you, right? So it's just, obviously the house speaks for itself, but you never know what can be in the background. So keep that in mind. Cavianem Tor, due diligence, earnest money. The money goes back to you at closing, and keep in mind that the due diligence fee is something that you have to negotiate, right? And you and your agent, the buyer agent, will have to negotiate on your behalf. My job is to write as low of an amount as possible. Your job is to always be informed, to listen to what we're advising you, to make sure everything is going well with your loan. You are providing all of the documents necessary to the loan officer, because we want to make sure that the appraisal is also done in that due diligence period, because that's really very important. We want to make sure the house appraises at contract price, and if there's an issue and it doesn't, which it's very rare because we obviously do our due diligence as agents as well, right? And we check comparables for you. We want to make sure that all of those things are done. And in order for those to be done from an appraisal perspective, you as a buyer need to provide all of your documentation in time as soon as the lender requires it, right? Because we only have a tight period of time. So we need to go do the inspections. We need to do the appraisal. We need to negotiate the appraisal. We need to negotiate the inspections if there's anything to negotiate. And we want to make sure we're not risking your earnest money, right? We're not going above that due diligence period in that earnest money period after the due diligence period expired at 5 p.m. on the last day as per contract of due diligence period. So I hope this is not too complicated. If you would like to talk more about this, feel free to connect with me. I am here to give you advice on anything that you might want, and I'm here to explain it again to you. I will be going live every week from now on, because I see, again, there's a lot of people relocating and a lot of people that are not very familiar and feel pressured into maybe putting even a couple of $1,000 down on a due diligence fee and earnest money fee, just because they're like, whoa, we didn't know that the market is just as competitive as the California market, for example. So that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. My contact number is 919-348-7303. If you'd like to visit my company's website, it's www.theprosperousagency.com. My name is Ioana Nin, and I have been serving the Greater Triangle area for 10 years now. I am the founder of the company, and we welcome all of you here. We came from Europe, and we then moved to LA. So we're very familiar with relocating, with schools, with everything that pertains, very, very important questions that have to do with the purchase of your home. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. I will talk to you next week.